What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with the Week 8 Team Builder of the GBA Season 8, where your undefeated Kansas City Girard Chiefs are preparing to take on the Montreal Habsols, coached by AsterJ. Make sure to go check out my opponent's channel. He's also brand new to the league this season. He was my buddy that got promoted from the D League to the GBA main this season, so definitely make sure to go check him out. Not having the strongest start to the season in terms of record, but definitely in terms of his record, I feel like he's playing a lot better than the other coaches that are currently at the bottom of the standings. Aster could very easily be a 500 team right now, or even better, honestly, if some luck had gone his way throughout the season. So yeah, don't sleep on Aster. I'm certainly not sleeping on Aster, but Aster really could. I don't think he's eliminated from playoffs yet, but he definitely could make a run to the playoffs at the end of the season if he manages to pull it together here at the end. So yeah, don't count my man out. He's definitely a solid player, and that's gonna be quite the game here for sure. But again, make sure to go check him out. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this matchup here, as my opponent Aster has access to the Mega Lopunny, Scolipede, Sylveon, Darmanitan, Fortress, Melodic, Zoroark, Zapdos, Gourgeist, Mudsdale, and Barbaracle, with his Z captains being the Scolipede and the Barbaracles. So he has a lot of threatening offense on his team, that's for sure. The Megalop, the Scolipede, the Darmanitan, even offensive Zapdos is really scary. Barbaracle is a freaking threat for a tier 5, especially with the Z Crystal. So he has a lot of really scary offense, in addition to some pretty disgusting defense. I don't think it's quite the strong. The defensive cores aren't quite as strong as what he had back in the D League. Back then, he had a bunch of stuff like an Umbreon, a Cresselia, Mega Blastoise, like all this really fat, gross stuff. And he has some gross stuff here, like Melodic and Zapdos both can be really disgusting. The Gourgeist can be really disgusting, especially because it's able to pretty much hard wall Breloom, which is kind of unfortunate. Sylveon as well, don't think I mentioned that. Fortress is a Pokemon that's fat. It's not really good, but it's pretty fat. So he has some stuff that's kind of annoying to break through, but I think his offense is probably the more threatening aspect of his draft. But the thing is, Aster as a player in draft format, I feel is much better using defensive teams, or at least bulky balance, that kind of thing. I've never really seen him thrive using hyper offense yet at this stage in his career, and as a result, I think that's why his record hasn't been as stunning this season in the GBA. His team is pretty offensive, but he is more of a defensive-minded player, and he's been trying to build more offensively as well. Just hasn't really worked out too well for him. So basically what I want to do here in this matchup, one, because he is more of a defensive-minded player, but also because I got pretty much stalled out in my last matchup against him in the D League from Crest Umbreon crap. I'm not going to let that happen, okay? Basically, the idea behind the team that I'm going to try to build here in this week is that I will not lose to his defense. I refuse to lose to his defense. I'm going to force him to build offensively and play offensively to have any chance against me in this matchup. I'm going to bring so many different ways to abuse his defenses, to where if he brings defense, it will not be able to stand up against me. But even if he does bring his offense, I feel like I have a lot of good ways to check those offensive members. It only becomes an issue if he brings pretty much purely offense against me, as I really do need those turns against his passive defensive mons to be able to get recovery back on things like my Venusaur, things like my Celesteela, and etc., or Arcanine as well in this matchup. So just a little bit of a tidbit here on what the approach really is for this game. But I've already mentioned that the Barbaracle itself is actually kind of an annoying threat against my team. The one thing that Barbaracle isn't able to do against me is set up easily, as I do have the option for Double Grass. I have Breloom, which can Mach Punch, but he also has a couple pretty good responses to Breloom in the Zapdos as well as the Gourgeist. So Breloom's not really the most reliable way to deal with Barbaracle, but Barbaracle surprisingly is kind of a threat against my team, and yeah, something I really have to keep in mind in my build. I don't really want to ever allow it to have opportunities for free setup, so that's something I have to keep in mind. But probably more speaking towards the high tier stuff, at least Scolipede is pretty well checked by my draft. Mainly Celesteela is pretty much unarguably the best Scolipede counter in the game, so I don't really have to fear losing to an SD Scolipede this week, which is nice, but I would definitely expect to see maybe a Hazard Stack Endeavor Scolipede set if he does bring Scolipede in this matchup. I think he might lead with Scolipede as well if he brings it. I think that's a pretty likely thing for him to lead with. I also think if he brings something like the Zoroark, that could also be a good lead, so I need to keep those potential leads in mind when I'm constructing my team as well. But yeah, the Scolipede, don't really expect to see SD. If he brings it, I more expect to see Hazard Stack type of set this week instead of SD, but I guess he could potentially do both, but I just don't really see that happening here in this matchup personally. I think the Darmanitan is pretty annoying as well, just from a defensive standpoint on my end. It's able to get U-turn momentum on a lot of my Mons, so I do need to make sure I get up Stealth Rocks in this matchup to help wear that thing down. That'll help wear the thing down so it doesn't put so much pressure on my defenses. As something like Mega Venusaur alone, look at his team and look at Mega Venusaur. He really does not break Mega Venusaur well outside of a like Life Orb or Banded Darmanitan, or like, other than that, the only other real option he has is something like an offensive Zapdos or like a Specs Zoroark. So Mega Venusaur is incredible in this matchup if I'm able to play it properly and keep it healthy, but a lot of that just comes down to how the battle plays out. It's very easy for Mega Venusaur to get put in a position where it's not able to stay healthy if I'm pressured enough, for example. So yeah, I got to keep that in mind with Mega Venusaur, but it's certainly a Pokemon that I can build around here for this matchup, and that's exactly what I am going to do here against this team, just because he struggles so much to be able to beat it. Now I have to think as well in terms of what he's going to bring to be able to switch into Mega Venusaur and deal with Mega Venusaur. I strongly contemplated stuff like bringing an offensive Mega Venusaur set, as he really doesn't switch into offensive 3 attacks Mega Venusaur, very standard with like HP Fire, Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain. He doesn't switch into that well at all, unless he brings something like a specially defensive Zapdos. Because of that, I think specially defensive Zapdos is a pretty likely set against my team, as it would be able to switch in while the Mega Venusaur would be able to potentially get momentum with U-turn, maybe Defog. It would also probably run like Dual Stab against my team. That seems really likely as well. So just some stuff I'm thinking about here, but I really do think Mega Venusaur is the best possible mon to try to build around here in this week. Now, one other thing I did want to point out before we jump on over to the team builder that does make this build really tricky is that he has so many really scary physical threats, like the Mega Lopunny, Scolipede, Darmanitan especially. Scolipede is not a Pokemon that I'm willing to risk him not bringing. And because of that, I feel like I am kind of forced into bringing a defensive Celesteela of sorts, just to make sure that an SD Scolipede doesn't beat me, because I definitely will never have a speed tier advantage against Scolipede, so I need to make sure I have it well checked defensively. So I have to keep that in mind. But he also has the Mega Lopunny, which is a really, really annoying Pokemon against my team because of its speed tier and strength. Against me. Now, it's only really an issue if he has hazards on the field, as if he doesn't have hazards on the field, then I'm in really good shape. Issue is my hazard removal is kind of doo-doo on this draft. Despite having 3 defoggers, none of them are too great at doing that. So hazard stack with Mega Lopunny is something that's really scary as well, and something I'll have to make sure I build around appropriately. But because he has all those physically offensive threats, that makes his specially offensive threats that much better against my team. Stuff like the Zoroark and the Zapdos especially, those two are quite the issue for my team to deal with if I adequately prepare for his physical threats as well. So that's kind of the thing that's going on in my mind here. I'm going to probably try to, or I am going to put together several mixed EV spreads in this matchup to try to best deal with that combination, that onslaught of physical and special offense that his team has for this week. So now with all that said, let's go ahead and hop on over to the team builder. And like I said before, we are going to start this off with the Mega Venusaur. Now this set is really, really good against him, so I opted to actually go with Growth instead of Hidden Power Fire on this set. But first of all, this is more of a physically defensive Mega Venusaur designed to take hits from Barbaracle, Mega Lopunny, not really Scolipede. That's my... oh, what's it called? That's my Celesteela's job. But this can also take a hit from Darmanitan if I need to as well, but I do not ever intend to let this take a Flare Blitz from a non-choice Scarfed Darmanitan, so I will be keeping that in mind for this game. But overall, this chews hits from literally everything on his team. I don't think he has anything that one-shots this, actually, which is pretty ridiculous without a boost. So Mega Venusaur is really gross against this team. My goal is definitely to keep this thing alive and healthy for as much of the game as possible. Now, I have Growth on this set to make sure that I can 1v1 the specially defensive Zapdos that I really think is coming this week. Specially defensive Zapdos deals so well with a lot of my biggest threats, like a Hydreigon, like a Gardevoir, like this Mega Venusaur, for example. It's able to switch and even sell Celesteela if I was like autotomized. It's able to switch in to all of those threats super easily, and I think it's a really good bring for him this week, so I wanted to make sure I had a way to beat that. Now that left me with the options such as Leech Seed and Toxic to help me do that, but he also has the very likely option of bringing a Miracoat Melodic this week for, again, the same reasons, as Melodic as more of a special wall is able to take hits well from Gardevoir, from Hydreigon, etc., and Mega Venusaur, and maybe get off a cheap kill with a Miracoat against me, and that's not something I wanted to allow to happen either. If I was running Leech Seed and Giga Drain, this doesn't necessarily beat Melodic 1v1 if it's carrying Miracoat, because basically every single turn becomes a 50-50 whenever I want to go for Giga Drain. I can't just set this to stall either with a Mega Venusaur against a Melodic, as I only have 8 of those, so I have to keep that in mind, but Growth does help me mitigate that issue. And the good thing is, if he brings Miracoat, that means he probably does not have a move slot for Haze or Dragon Tail, and if he brings Haze or Dragon Tail, he does not have a move slot for Miracoat, so this set just naturally beats all forms of Melodic 1v1, as well as being able to beat specially defensive Zapdos 1v1 as well, as that will not be able to 2-hit KO this set, and that also applies for pretty much his entire team. So especially if he brings a very defensive team, this thing is easily the win condition here in this week of the GBA. So next up is going to be the Celesteela. This is my dedicated counter to Scolipede until I have confirmed what type of Scolipede it is. If he does bring Scolipede, I expect it to be a lead set like I said before, and as soon as it is confirmed that it is not an SD setup sweeper, then I can play a little more recklessly with my Celesteela, maybe switch it into Mega Lopunny, for example, if I need to, or maybe this is kind of a crazy thought, or even maybe allow it to take a Flare Blitz from Darm to get off a ton of recoil so that Darm just dies to rocks or something. That's always an option in this matchup, because Darm just naturally likes to kill itself with recoil and Stealth Rock. So yeah, so there's a lot of utility for Celesteela in this matchup, but I need to make sure it is alive and healthy to deal with the Scolipede at any point in the game, basically until Aster shows me, hey, this Scolipede is not a setup threat. I don't necessarily need to have Celesteela to be able to stop you. I just need to keep it around basically until that point occurs. So that's the idea behind the Celesteela. Again, it's primarily physically defensive. This week, I was able to toss a few extra EVs into special defense after hitting appropriate benchmarks against the Mega Lopunny and the Barbaracle. But yeah, so the extra special defense would help against Zoroark basically, essentially. But the combination Air Slash, Heavy Slam hits most of his team at least neutrally. The only exception, I believe, being the Zapdos, for which I have both Leech Seed and Toxic. So Zapdos is never a free switch into this. But as soon as I get a Toxic on Zapdos, especially, Mega Venusaur really beats it like super easily. So yeah, so the goal, especially if I determine it to be a specially defensive Zapdos, is to lure the thing in with this, get a Toxic off on it, and then Mega Venusaur should be able to just have a really good time against his team. So that's the idea with the Celesteela. Now next up is the Arcanine. Now Arcanine is a set that, man, I played with this a lot. The moveset itself didn't really change too much, it was more the EV spread. Let's talk about the moveset first. So Morning Sun, obvious recovery, it's going to be a fat Pokemon this week, going to be able to sponge hits from things like Darmanitan for Mega Lopunny, from potentially stuff like the Zoroark as well, if he brings that, as I do have a fair amount of special bulk, and if I can keep rocks off the field, this would help a lot against that. Also nice to switch into things like Fortress and Sylveon and etc. Pretty much my team just destroys Sylveon, which is why you see the Hydreigon on this team, and I'll talk about that here a little bit later. But yeah, because my whole team bodies Sylveon, I really don't have to worry about that too much. But even so, it's nice to have. Now, Aster in several weeks in the GBA has run Baton Pass strategies. I believe he's brought Cosmic Power Baton Pass Mega Lopunny once. He's brought Calm Mind Baton Pass Sylveon recently, so I wanted to make sure I had a way to deal with that, as well as potentially random like substitute bulk up forms of Darmanitan, maybe even Sub-Belly Drum, stuff like that. I wanted to make sure I had a way to check those, and that's what Roar Arcanine does here in this matchup. So Roar is really, really good. It also makes sure that the Melodic isn't able to get a free Marble Scale against me. Not that it's really a big deal, but my Hydreigon, as you'll see here soon, is physical, so I don't really want to get a status on the Melodic if I can help it. So not having Toxic on this is nice, I guess, in that regard as well. But more often than not, I'm just going to be clicking Flare Blitz, Morning Sun, or Roar with this Pokemon, and just Extreme Speed to help pick off stuff like a Mega Lopunny, a Scolipede. Either of those mons that might be looking kind of annoying against my team. Rocky Helmet is there to help me chip down the Mega Lopunny and the Darmanitan specifically. Now, only other thing to talk about here is the EV spread. Like I said, I went back and forth on this a lot. I really, really wanted to bring extra special bulk on this set to help me deal with the Zoroark and potentially an offensive Zapdos, but I really think that he's going to bring a specially defensive Zapdos instead of an offensive. And even if it is offensive, I don't expect max offenses, so this should still be able to take hits from it relatively well. Also in the case of the Zoroark, I feel like my team is very good at pressuring Zoroark to where it's not able to get very many free switch-ins at points where it can actually get a kill. So with that in mind, I don't think I really need to bring a dedicated specially defensive wall to be able to deal with the Zoroark. So that's my thought process on that. But yeah, so that's about all there is to it on the Arcanine. Opt to go for a mixed defensive spread. Basically, the defense allows me to take 2 Adamant returns from Mega Lopunny after rocks, and 2 Adamant high jump kicks from Mega Lopunny without rocks. And then the rest just the special defense for the Zoroark and potential offensive Zapdos. Now next up is the, or even just defensive Zapdos. Either way, I need to be able to take hits from that thing because Zapdos is a massive threat against my team both defensively and offensively. Now we have the Seismitoad, again another Rocky Helmet set this week with Stealth Rock, Earthquake, HP Fire, and Knockoff. This is my anti-lead for the Fortress, which is 100% going to be his Stealth Rocker in this game. He has zero reason to bring the Mudsdale against my team. Mudsdale is really bad against my team, especially since I have so many free switch-ins. It's basically free recovery with Venusaur if he brings it, and it just literally doesn't do anything against me. So I really expect the only other rocker option I think he has is the Barbaracle, which I don't see coming as a rocker definitely whenever he kind of needs Fortress as a Fairy Resist for my Gardevoir, as well as potentially a Breloom response. So that's why I expect Fortress to come as this rocker. Now this set is again primarily physically defensive because Darmanitan is a really spooky Pokemon and I want to be able to wear that thing down as quickly as possible. But this also is able to win the situation 1v1 where Fortress tries to beat my Seismitoad in a Hazard Wars. With the Rocky Helmet, the Fortress will never be able to spin away the rocks before it dies, since as a Pokemon is KO'd by Rocky Helmet, the extra effect of the move that it touches me with doesn't actually happen. So if he were to kill himself with a Rapid Spin against my Rocky Helmet, the rocks would remain on the field and I would win the Hazard War. So that's the general idea with this. This is my immediate switch into the Fortress. I also have HP Fire, just in case he thinks that it is free for him to like switch Fortress into a Seismitoad that just got up Stealth Rocks. As if he does that, he's going to bite the dust to an HP Fire, which is pretty awesome for sure. So Earthquake is really spammable against him, and Knockoff is to make sure that his defensive mons lose their items if he decides that it's a good idea to switch his defensive Pokemon into my Seismitoad. So yeah, just a really annoying Pokemon against them, really good utility Pokemon in this matchup, and I should be able to get those Stealth Rocks up, which are really good against the potential Scolipede, Darmanitan, and Zapdos, that all 3 of which are, well, Scolipede not really, but Darmanitan and Zapdos especially are really annoying for my team, and my Celesteela especially would love to see those 2 get whittled down and potentially removed by a Stealth Rock if possible. So yeah, this is good, again, a very good set against him. Next up is the Gardevoir. Now this is another way to make sure his Fat cannot beat me. Again, I refuse to let his Fat beat me in this matchup, so I'm bringing Choice Specs, Trick, Gardevoir with Moonblast. Is what this does is whenever I'm able to get a free switch into the Zapdos, maybe when Mega Venusaur forces a recovery from it, maybe when my Hydreigon forces him to like switch into Zapdos potentially against it, as again if he's a specially defensive Zapdos, I could easily see him switching Zapdos into Hydreigon, then this will be able to take advantage of that with the Specs Moonblast, as there's no Zapdos set that can avoid a 2-hit KO from a Specs Moonblast from this Gardevoir. So with that in mind, he has really limited switch-ins to Gardevoir. He only has, I think, 2 Fairy Resist off the top of my head, being Fortress and the Scolipede. There might be another one, but regardless, he doesn't really have Fairy Resists. His best possible way to switch into this is with a Melodic, which, truth be told, I would very happily donate my Choice Specs to if I needed to in this matchup. Although I still have the Mega Venusaur, it should be able to beat it relatively easily. But if it's potentially a like a Haze Mega Venusaur or a Haze Melodic, then I might want to, then I might actually want to donate my Choice Specs to it. But more often than not, I'm probably just going to keep the Choice Specs and spam Moonblast against this team because he really doesn't have switch-ins. This is a really good way to break through the defensive cores on his draft and just put myself in an advantageous position here in this game. So that's the Gardevoir set, and I'm basically just speed creeping his Zapdos that is speed creeping my max speed Breloom. And then finally in the last slot I kind of fiddled between Breloom and Hydreigon. I opted for Hydreigon just because of the switches that it forces in, and those switches that I can also U-turn on into these massive threats on my team. Breloom could have been really good as well, but I felt like Breloom was more of a Revenger in this game, which I felt like I really didn't need as badly as I needed momentum against a team like Aster. So that's why I opted for this. It's also nice having Defog, just because he does have 2 Spike users on his draft, in addition to several Rockers that I don't want those hazards on the field. I talked about earlier how my hazard removal isn't very good, so he might try to hazard stack against me. I would not be surprised at all if that is the case. So I want to make sure I have a way of getting rid of those hazards, or even like dual screens or something, just in case that's the strategy he takes. Aster is very creative as a builder. Sometimes that creativity backfires a little bit, as you've seen throughout the season, but sometimes it's really good and on point. So I want to make sure that I have ways to deal with some of the more effective creative strategies that he might whip out here in this matchup. Now I have Superpower and Outrage as my other 2 moves. Outrage because I do not expect to see Sylveon. I think he's going to look at all the offensive ways I have to abuse Sylveon and decide it's not actually worth it to bring it as a Hydreigon counter. Plus I could always just run Life Orb Iron Tail on this and blow it back anyway. So yeah, I really don't see Sylveon coming here in this matchup. So having Scarfed Outrage is super good against him, especially because my Seismitoad serves as a pretty good Fortress lure, and my Mega Venusaur serves as a pretty good way to weaken down the Fortress once he might discover that I'm not actually packing the HP Fire. So I think that his Dragon Resists are not going to be able to stick around very long in this game, making Outrage spam really effective from this Pokemon. Superpower is also nice for the Mega Lopunny specifically. It allows me to almost guaranteed knock out Mega Lopunny after Stealth Rock, I believe. So yeah, just nice to have a good offensive way to deal with that in case it gets off, like a Power-Up Punch, and some of my defensive members have a really key amount of health to maintain, or maybe they're all in range of a +1 hit for Mega Lopunny, because Mega Lopunny is a strong Pokemon. He's probably going to run Adamant this week. I don't really see him trying to outpace an Aerodactyl, although he might. It just depends on what his defensive options are in this game. If he doesn't bring like Melodic, then I think he'll be Jolly Mega Lopunny, so he's not forced out by Aerodactyl. But if he brings Melodic, I definitely think he will be Adamant. Or even, I guess that also applies for like Fortress as well. I think if he just has a physical wall of some sort, then he will be Adamant Megalop against my team. So just something to keep in mind there as well. But that's the team here for this week. I feel like it's a pretty good team, especially if he decides to bring more of a defensive squad against me, which, like I said, is what he brought in the D-League, and it's what really irritated me that last time I played him. I got so salty after that game just because it was literally, I felt like I was getting stalled out for like 30 minutes. That's honestly what it felt like, because I couldn't break through Cresselia Umbreon. I am not going to let him stall me out with defense this week. I feel like I have plenty of tools to be able to beat his defense. I really think this team beats his defense down really well. It comes down to how well I can handle his offense. I think the special threats are going to be bigger threats against my team. Stuff like Zapdos, Zoroark, those are 2 mons that are going to be tough for me to deal with, but I can outplay them, and that's going to be what it comes down to here in this matchup. I have to be able to outplay his offense and just body bag his defense. That's what it's going to come down to here in this game. But really looking forward to this matchup. Hopefully we can continue the streak here and maybe advance to an 8-0 record, but we will just have to see on that. Again, do not sleep on Aster. Aster is so much better than his record suggests. Make sure to go check out his channel, check out his other battles throughout the season. I know he's kind of sort of given up for this season so far. I really wish he hasn't. Maybe he hasn't really. I don't know. We'll see. But he mentioned in his last video that he's kind of given up a little bit. So I hope that's not actually the case, as he's truly a very skilled player that I hope you guys will go check out. But yeah, I think we're about done here. I will see you guys tomorrow for the match. We do actually have, I never mentioned this earlier, and I should have. Right now, we actually have some a March Madness tournament going on, actually. So whenever you're seeing this video, this is probably going to go up like right before the bracket round starts. So make sure to go hop on over to the stream here, twitch.tv/TTM_tournaments, and you can watch me and a bunch of my friends and staff members commentate the March Madness Pokemon Draft format tournament, which has a lot of players involved. Maybe some GBA players as well will make the bracket round. I don't know yet at this point, but you know, we'll find out on that. But yeah, come say hi to us if you're watching this and you're interested in watching that. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the Twitch down in the description below. But yeah, I think we are about done here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the match. We're going to do, I'm probably not going to upload it until like the evening so that I have some time to put the video together. There's no way I'm going to have time to get the video ready with all the tournament preparation going on right now. So yeah, sorry it's going to be later in the day, almost guaranteed, but yeah, be on the lookout for that. So I'm about done here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.